Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is JC Cortez, and I'm the Director of Training and Development here at Synergia. Let me give one quick announcement to our Spanish attendees. Muy buenas noches a todos y gracias por estar aquí. Mi nombre es Juan Carlos Cortés y gracias por estar aquí esta noche. Si desea escuchar esta presentación en español, por favor, hacer clic en el globito al fondo de su pantalla que dice interpretación y ahí usted puede elegir cómo desea escuchar la presentación, ya sea en inglés o español. Está disponible este servicio esta noche. Si tiene algún problema con la interpretación o en poder escucharlo o algo así, por favor de colocar esa información dentro de la charla para que así nosotros podemos dirigirnos a eso y a corregirlo si podemos. Gracias por estar aquí y bienvenidos a Sinergia. So yes, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. Just want to let you know that if you need closed captioning, you can activate that at the top of your screen. It should say to enable closed captioning, and to display it, you should be able to see it. If you wish to activate that, simply select closed captioning. Also, we are offering simultaneous interpretation for this presentation tonight, which is available. If you wish to activate that, we've just given instructions, but the way to do that is to click on the interpretation icon at the bottom of the screen, and you can listen to the presentation in Spanish. Also, before we begin, I wanted to let you know that we're broadcasting this live on our Facebook page via Facebook Live, and want to give a warm welcome to everybody joining us via Facebook. Hello, and thank you for being with us tonight. A few housekeeping notes. You will receive a recording, a link to the recording, as well as the PowerPoint that will be used tonight. And a poll will be activated at the end of this presentation. We encourage questions at all times. However, with case-specific questions and for the sake of privacy, please remember that this is a public forum and we are being broadcast on Facebook and the internet. So lastly, an important note, all of the advice that I'm going to share with you tonight is best practices. I am not a behavior specialist. I am not an ABA person. And if you have questions specifically around behavior, we ask that you please consult a professional specializing in that, or contact a medical professional who can advise you better. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is JC. I'm the Director of Training and Development here at Synergia's Metropolitan Parent Center. A few words about Synergia. Synergia is a multi-service agency based here in East Harlem, here in Manhattan, and we've been supporting New Yorkers and their families with disabilities for more than 40 years. We offer a rich source of information and training tailored for parents, including parents whose primary language is not English, and or who they themselves may have special training needs. We help them participate more effectively in their children's education and development, and we partner with professionals and policymakers to improve outcomes for all children with disabilities. Synergia, which is Spanish for synergy, is one of New York City's 3 federally funded parent centers committed to serving people with disabilities and their families, with an added focus on communities of color and the economically disadvantaged. Synergia creates innovative programs ranging from transitional housing for homeless families who have children with disabilities, community residences for adults with developmental disabilities, parenting classes for adult parents with intellectual disabilities, and a number of other things, such as our after-school art program with the Guggenheim Museum, as well as Spanish support group for parents of children with autism and intellectual developmental disabilities. So yes, as I mentioned tonight, we're going to be talking about behavior. A very hot topic and something that so many have asked us to present on, and we've gone and done our homework and hope to provide you with some valuable tips and strategies on how to help support behavior management in children. And yes, so thank you so much for being here and welcome to Synergia. Let me queue up my PowerPoint and we'll get started. Okay, so here we go. So yes, tonight's presentation is on behavior management techniques for parents. And we're so happy to have you here. As I mentioned, Synergia is a parent center, a federally funded parent center, and we work in collaboration with other parent centers here in the city of New York, those being Advocates for Children and Include NYC, and we're always uplifting each other's work and everything that we do, surrounding and supporting families and caregivers with children with disabilities. Tonight's agenda will include understanding why children behave or misbehave, according to whom you ask, and then the objective of punishment and understanding the differences between punishment and discipline. Also, what is positive behavior management about, and ideas and strategies regarding behavior management. You'll also be able to leave from this presentation understanding how you can talk to your teacher and talk to others at the school about behavior or for your child, and how they can also support you in affecting and changing behaviors when it comes to the IEP. So understanding child behavior. Hold on. Oh, goodness. Yes, here we go. Sorry. Understanding child behavior. So many people think like children just want attention, or if they can't get your attention when they're behaving, then they'll do it by doing some inappropriate behavior. And usually behavior is some way to like either communicate something. Behavior is communication at the end of the day. And so it's communicating something, a need, a want, a desire. And sometimes, you know, maybe the child wants something to address some sort of discomfort, or something to gain comfort or more comfort from some situation that the child might find. And so that way the child is saying, you know, maybe if I do this, if the child can articulate what they need or what they're trying to get, then maybe they know a behavior that they know can get some way closer to what they're seeking. So sometimes this is, you know, maybe if I drop this food item, or maybe I drop my banana, or maybe if I throw it, or maybe if I do something, maybe if I have a tantrum, this is a way that I can get the behavior that, or get what I want. It's not necessarily trying to ruin anyone's day or trying to do anything. And understanding child behavior is like, it is not to seek revenge. It is not trying to do that. Kids may feel important if they try to hurt others, or if there's something that's been done to them, maybe they'll mimic that behavior and maybe try and do something like that, but that's not the inherent nature of a child's behavior. They also learn that using negative behaviors might be a way to get what a child wants, or certain behaviors that maybe they're just bad behaviors. Remember, behavior is learned. Behavior is not something that's innate. So maybe it's something that they've seen. Maybe it's something that they've seen in a parent. Maybe it's something that we've seen in someone else that's working around the child. Maybe it's something they've seen at schools. We always have that idea of, you know, like, oh, maybe this person is a bad influence, or this child, or your little friend is a bad influence on you. And remember, behaviors are learned. So we want to keep that in mind. Discipline versus punishment. What is the difference? Punishment is probably the least effective behavior management technique, and it's usually physical or psychological in nature. These changes, maybe silences in a behavior, they don't address the underlying attitude or what the problem actually is. Remember, behavior is something that there's something that's causing it before it actually happens. So there's always a causal moment before the actual behavior happens or shows up, and then how it's affected afterwards. So it might be temporary changes whenever you punish a child, but it doesn't necessarily silence it or address the issue at hand. Also, it might be a way of teaching a child that using force is an acceptable way of obtaining a goal. And that's something that we want to be careful of. You know, punishment, oh, if they punish them this, then this is what will happen. This is the goal that will be achieved. And that's something that we have to be really careful when it comes to around punishment. So discipline is about ways of teaching and modeling or demonstrating appropriate behaviors or positive behaviors. We have to model them ourselves and show what that is. And we have to reinforce it always with, you know, this is what I want you to do. This is how this should happen. This is what should happen in case of this. And this is what we have to be, this is where we have to be consistent. And I'll talk about that throughout this presentation, about consistency and the importance of it. Strategies to teach children to improve or increase positive behaviors and to decrease negative behaviors. So there are going to be different strategies that we use to improve or increase positive behaviors. Maybe we reward certain behaviors, and maybe we disincentivize negative behaviors. It doesn't necessarily mean punishment, though. Discipline is also about ways to teach a child self-control and to develop positive relationships. We also have to be able to show a child limits and also how to develop positive relationships without making them, threatening or making them feel dangerous. We also want to show this is how you develop a positive relationship, because relationships and relationship development skills is a lifelong skill that we want to make sure that we're supporting and showing someone how to do. Also, discipline is about using a need to introduce structure and stability for a child, and also the need to do it with consistency. So we always want to show structure and stability, like this is how this happens. And when this doesn't happen, then this is how we can get around it, or this is how we can overcome it. And we have to make sure that we're giving the same message to our children when it comes to talking about behaviors. So understanding the difference between punishment and discipline is key to helping us move forward. Now, what is behavior management? Behavior management, as it's defined, is a plan or set of activities that promotes appropriate behavior, and it seeks to eliminate inappropriate behavior. So we have to promote appropriate and we have to eliminate inappropriate. But how do we go about doing that? The goal at the end of the day is for a child to develop self-discipline or self-control and have good interpersonal relationships. Interpersonal just means a relationship between me and someone else. So we want the child to be able to have that self-discipline and have that self-control. We also, at the end of the day, we want the child to be able to come back to us and say, hey, mom, dad, this didn't work. What, later on, so we can kind of break it down more. And troubleshoot it with them. We always want them to come back to us, and we want to be the first resource of information for our child. So what can parents do? So parents, before you eliminate your child's negative behaviors, you must become aware or eliminate your own negative behaviors. And that's a tall ask. But we also know that we always talk about it and joke about it in our familiar circles. And, we might say, oh, our little child, they look more like mom than they do dad, but they act more like dad than they do mom. So, like our children are watching us constantly. And we always say, children soak up everything like a sponge. And the same is true in behaviors and how we manifest those. So if we see like certain behaviors, children will model that and children will copy that. They'll see what it does for them. So we also want to make sure that we're modeling the best behaviors that we want our children to mimic. And that might not just be our own, it might be also those around us, those in the household, and also what we expose our children to in terms of social media, television. So we want to think about that too. Also, what kind of language do you use around your kids, especially when you're angry, which is typically when we just kind of fly off the handle and anything might come out. And we want to make sure that we watch that. If it's not something that we want our children to say in public, then it's also something that we shouldn't say in private, or at least not in the audience of our children. So that's something that we need to be cognizant of. And also how we describe certain situations and certain people. We also, when is it appropriate? We need to be the first model. Parents are the first teacher for any child. And the same is true when it comes to behaviors. I know, I've gotten in trouble with my friends who have been new parents a long time ago, not recently, but where I would say, oh, the child they can't understand this. They're too young, whatever. And actually, no. And then you hear examples of it later. And we've all had our own examples with this experience. So let's think about that. And also to remember that children learn by what they see and what you do and how you act. Is there anything else I can do? Yes, you can establish a schedule and also reasonable routines. We always talk about setting rules as well, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But yes, establish a set schedule. This is when we do this. This is when we'll do that. And this is when we will do this before the end of the day. We want to set a schedule because it also sets expectations, and we can also walk a child through how everything will go. That way, when something doesn't happen according to plan, it's like, oh, you know what? Because of this, because there's subtle change, or maybe it's a big change even in the daily schedule, and we're like, we're going to do this instead. We always want to set that expectation up, because that way the child knows what to expect as well and how to behave. Oh, we're going to go out to eat tonight. I need you to be on your best manners, as opposed to, when we're at school or when we're at church or whatever. You see that where I'm going with that, though. And also reasonable routines. What's reasonable? We also want to give a child, time to like develop, be themselves, explore. So we want to, make sure that those routines are reasonable. Giving a child 15 minutes to get dressed and get ready for school is obviously unreasonable. So like, all right, you know what? Maybe you need to be in bed by 9 so that you can get up around 6 or 7 and be, able to get up, take a shower, get dressed, take your time, pick out your clothes. And then by the time 8:30 rolls around, we're ready to go. That's just an example. Also, we want to try and do things at the same time of day. This will also help the child learn what to expect, and also help them prepare for transitions from one event to another. Transitioning is difficult for any of us, whether we're a toddler or whether we're even 30 years old. There's certain things that transitions that they're just sticky. And sometimes we need to like be able to prepare for those the best way that we can. Like if it were a test or maybe an interview or something different that's happening out of routine for us at work, it's the same thing that we want to do for a child. Oh, you know what? Tomorrow it's going to look a little different. We're going to do this, and we're going to do things differently in this aspect. Let me just check the chat. I can't see it because I'm in presentation mode. Wonderful speaking at the same time since supporting smoother transitions. Yes, thank you. Yes, because we want to think about those things. Transition, I mean, we want to prepare for big transitions like life transitions when we leave school or go to college or get in the car, like what is it going to be like for our child whenever we're in traffic? Because traffic is so unpredictable, right? So we want to think about these things and help a child prepare. It helps prepare their expectations. And in doing that, that whole exercise and the whole exercise in and of itself kind of lowers our anxiety as well, our own parental anxiety, our adult anxiety, because it's like, okay, you know what we're going to do, I know what we're going to do, and we're in this together kind of thing. It kind of establishes that unspoken agreement, and also just connection. We also want to make few rules. We want to make a few rules with consequences for both positive and negative behavior. So we typically we say, oh, don't run in the house. Don't run with scissors in your hand. We think about those things and we're like, okay, but what happens when they do happen? And we need to be consistent, but we also need to say like, hey, when I said don't run in the house, that means slow down, or don't jog, don't do anything fast paced, don't run with scissors in your hand. You might hurt yourself, you might hurt somebody. We want to talk about that, but we also want to talk about consequences. What might happen if it's not a threat. And I want to make the distinction here. Consequences are not necessarily a threat. If you do this, I will do that. That's more of a threat. If you run with scissors in your hand and you fall, you might hurt yourself. You might hurt mommy. You might hurt daddy. You might hurt the cat. Those are consequences. We're not saying it's gonna happen. We're just saying this is a possible consequence. Also, possible when we talk about positive behaviors, if you do everything right, you might make your teacher smile. If you do this for your grandmother will really enjoy it. If you pet the dog will really start wagging its tail in appreciation. Those are things where we want to talk about consequences. Typically, we think of consequences as a negative, but we need to think about positives, and we need to explain possible outcomes, both positive and negative, when we're trying to say something. Hey, if you're not running in the house and you run into mommy who's coming around the corner, it won't hurt, and you'll both be thankful, right? So yes, and paying attention and noticing when your child is behaving appropriately. Recognize those moments and praise those moments. Children want praise. We all want praise. We crave it. We're human beings. It's just, it's in our DNA. And we need to always remember that. We always want to say, it's not always, the bad behaviors that get our attention. We don't want our children to think of us that way either. Oh, you did something wrong, therefore, da 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 da. Hey, you did a really great job today, or you did a great job sitting through church today. Or maybe, you made that A on your math exam, and I know you've been preparing so hard for it. Great job. We want to recognize that and praise those behaviors. Hey, you did really well in the restaurant tonight. And tell them, what they did right, what they did really well. Children want to hear that. And it's just reinforcing positive behavior, and that's something that we can do. And it's not terribly hard. So we want to think about these things when there's something else that we can do, because there is, and we should try. If we're asking our children to try to behave, we also want to nobody wants to do something for nothing, right? So let's think about that. We also want to be positive. We also want to do this in terms of model the behavior that is expected from the child. Do as I do. Look at me, look at daddy, look at mommy. And maybe the child isn't going to get it right. They're children after all. They're not going to get it right to how we would probably want it, on a scale of 1 to 10, we always want a 10, but they'll grow towards it. And whenever we recognize them working towards it, we need to acknowledge that, as I just said, and reinforce that. Great job. That was so good. Or that was so good, and we can also do this and add upon it. Just when we're thinking about how we engage with other adults, we always say constructive criticism as opposed to something negative criticism. It's the same thing. If a colleague says something and they say, oh, maybe they said something that is kind of right and kind of not right, but, we don't just say, oh, they're wrong. We just say, and to add on to that, and to piggyback onto that, and to add more value to that statement, let's do that. So kind of the same thing in this way. When we're modeling that behavior, I noticed you did this and I'm so proud of you and I'm so glad you did it. And next time, do this, and maybe you can add on to it little by little, gradually. We'll talk about setting expectations and goals here in a minute, but yes, we also want to talk respectfully and tell them what to do rather than what not to do. We want to give examples of things to do. Nobody wants to hear, don't do this and don't do that and don't do this, because at some point you lose the person. You lose the person, whether they're an adult, but especially if they're a child, because then they just feel discouraged, disappointed in self, disappointed that they didn't do enough for you. And so children, they want to live up to our parents' expectations. They want to be rewarded and praised. So instead of hearing, I told you not to run and now you're running, I'm not happy. That's what a child will take that, process it on their own. And we don't even know where their little beautiful minds are going. So we want to talk respectfully, not condescending. And we want to tell them what to do rather than what not to do. It'll be more uplifting and the message will be better received. We also want to listen actively to our child. And this is a really good example for a child to feel valued. Many times the children, maybe they don't have the vocabulary that we as adults have, but they're going to try and explain it in the best way. And sometimes the best way that they have to explain it is not the most direct way. There's so many parts and little details, and they want to include them all, and they get so excited, and then they see the excitement on your face, or whatever your expression might be on your face, and then they're kind of trying to play into it as well. So we want to listen actively to our child and just say, we just want to listen. And when we hear something, when we listen to that, we want to take it and we want to say, oh, really, tell me more about this. Ask the details, ask a little bit more about that. So many times, and I don't know how you are as a parent, but I know I'll only speak to my experience. And that was it was always, children should be seen and not heard. Nobody wanted to hear what I thought about, a dinner. Nobody wanted to hear what I thought about on the news. It would be up to me to like, just kind of raise my hand or just speak out of turn, something like that. But when a child's trying to share something with you, that it's something that's important to them, and we want to try and listen to that and pick up on the details and let them know that we're hearing them. It's so easy to be dismissive and be like, not right now. A case in point from my childhood, it's like, I'm busy right now. I'm working, or I'm watching TV or something. Like, tell me a commercial, but like that moment is precious to a child. And it's like, mommy, daddy, I want to share something that's important to me. So we got to listen, and we really need to like make them know that they're being heard, and then build upon that so that they feel valued, so that their opinion matters, that they feel like, oh, yes, mommy heard me, daddy heard me. That means so much. We also want to remember the goal of discipline is not to control children or make them obey, but to give them skills. So at the end of the day, they can make decisions and they can gain self-control over time and be responsible for their own behavior. We're not going to be there as a shadow for our child every step of the way. And that's unfortunate, right? But we also want our child to be able to make those decisions and to know what to do. And we have to build that structure for them. It's kind of like we're building something within the child. And that's, we're showing them, I don't know, to use an example from the current events like the Matrix, blue pill, red pill, right? Good decision, bad decision. This is what you do. If you don't know what to do, then ask mommy, ask daddy, ask somebody you trust. Those are the things we want to instill in our children so that they know what to do when it comes to them to make these decisions for themselves. So we want to think about that. Tips for behavior management: make rules clear and flexible and predictable. Make rules, rules should be short, they should be clear, and they should be flexible. And we need to understand that, the longer the rule, you can't run in the house with scissors at 5 p.m. because so-and-so, like, you've lost me already halfway through the sentence. You should not run with scissors. Okay. And if you run with scissors, if there's a need to run with scissors or something, then why don't you just call for mommy and say, hey, mommy, I need you right now, instead of saying, there's a time. Like, you have the ability to structure this for a child. And we also need to make them predictable. And when a rule will happen, when this happens, this will happen. We need to set that up, and building that predictability also depends on our consistency. We as parents have to be consistent in what we're saying. We can't just make exceptions here and there. Oh, oh yeah, it's not a big deal. Or, oh, in our head, we might be thinking, oh, I don't have the time to deal with this right now. Like, just don't do it again. We just have to be clear, flexible, and predictable. And in that case, consistent. We also need to remember that we're talking about little people here. Even though they're very intelligent, they soak up everything like a sponge, they're not going to get it right every time. Learning is a process, and we have to remind ourselves as parents and be cognizant of those facts that behavior will evolve. Behavior will evolve just like learning evolves. And so we want to make these rules, maybe we break them down. Maybe the ultimate objective is really up here, but we have to get the child from here up to here. And so that takes time. So we need to also have that patience and that flexibility in the rule. Hey, the goal for this in our heads when we're structuring these rules will be for the child not to run with scissors. So we can like break it down in creating situations when the child might run, when the child has scissors. Maybe that's easier. And then when we can, over time, we combine them. Hey, it's not a good idea to run with scissors. So we need to make that clear. There was sometimes when you just make it the goal, the expectation smaller, it makes it that much easier to reach and attainable. And the child may not understand that, but we know that, and we can design these things accordingly. We also want to explain reasons for rules and give older children some input. So The reasons for the rules, right? Uh, you don't want to run, you might bump into somebody, you might hurt somebody. You don't want to run with scissors because you might hurt yourself. Um, you don't want to play with fire because you might, you know, burn something. You might burn yourself. You might burn a plate. You might burn something, you see where I'm going with this. We want to explain the reasons for rules. Kids understand, like, if kids, they want to know why. And it's like, we can't just say, because I said so, that's why. We really need to explain to them, like, this is for you. And we need to break it down and be on their level. So, I mean, obviously you're not going to give a little child, all the reasons, in a long answer, but you just know how to break it down for them. They want to understand. That's what children want to do. They want to understand and they want to know why. So we need to explain the reasons for rules. And then as they get older, yeah, hey, do you think this is a good rule, or do you think this is something that you would like to see? Because once you make them a part of the process, they want to be involved. They want to be involved in the process too. Like, ooh, I get to help make a rule. I get to help make a house rule. Oh my goodness. I mean, it's mind-boggling for me if you would have asked me as a child. So, those are examples that we can help give the student or give the child voice, give them a say, give them like those first steps towards self-advocacy. Hey, I actually might need this in this rule instead. Um, so we can talk to them, and it also gives us an opportunity to dialogue with our child. It gives us an opportunity to understand our child better. It gives us an opportunity to just really listen to our child and also show them who we want them to be through our own behaviors. So it all plays one into another step. We also want to use natural and short-term consequences. We would want to say, if you do this, you're going to be this way the rest of your life. We want to stay away from that. It speaks in absolute terms, one, and also it might not be true because we don't know what's going to happen for the rest of our lives. So we want to make sure that we can kind of like measure out, hey, this is what might happen in this case. You might upset somebody if you say this word in public. You might upset your mother if you say this word in public. You might be upset. Like, there are a number of examples that we could give here, but we want to use natural and short-term consequences. Short-term because we have better control over what's ahead of us in the most immediate future. Long-term, the longer we speak, the longer we get out of hand. And if it doesn't match up in the end, then our credibility as parents, our credibility in what we say also goes down. So we want to make sure that we're always, when we say what's going to happen, that we kind of like know what we're talking about too. Then it can lead to a lot of different questions otherwise. We also want to remember that following the rules is a learning process. As I said before, a child may not get it on the first go, but a child can keep trying. And we don't want to discourage that. And like, hey, I noticed you did this, and I noticed you didn't get it quite right, but you did do this right. So let's remember that. And the next time, maybe just a little bit more, just push them a little bit more. Whereas like, it's not a zero-sum game where it's like, oh, you got part of it right, but you didn't get any of it right. It's not a math problem. It's not 2 + 2 is 4. And if you didn't get it right, you just didn't get any of it. So we want to remember that. Also, we want to remember that the child is not the behavior, and vice versa. The behavior is not the child. The child is trying to show something. The child is trying to communicate something. The child is trying to articulate a need, a desire, a want. Hey, mommy, I like it when you hug me. Hey, mommy, I like it when you make this type of food, and I don't really like this. This is really, maybe it's something, this food tastes awful and they don't know how to say it. But we want to keep those things in mind when we're thinking about behavior. We also want to talk about just 10 principles of behavior management. And these are best practices, and I included them in the resources to this PowerPoint. So you can refer to them later. But we always want to treat our children with respect and dignity. They notice these things. They notice every little subtlety because they're around us all the time. And just like we do about them, it goes both ways. So we want to treat them with respect and dignity, not only for how we want them to treat us, but we also want them to hear that they are respected, and for them to know what respect feels like and what it feels like to be treated with dignity, so that way when they can see it in other places and it's not aligning with what it should be, they can recognize that and say, hey, that's not right. There's something not right with that. We're the first teachers, and we also need to model that. So we need to do that with how we treat our children. Always want to do what's in the child's best interest. And I know that sounds redundant, and maybe it is, but often we need to remember that. We need to do what's in the child's best interest. Maybe our goals, or our, when we go out in restaurant, we obviously don't want our child cursing like a sailor, but we also need to remember, we can't lose our cool, because if we lose our cool, that's first, we're going to lose a lot more than that. But what's in the child's best interest in that moment? How can I best serve my child? And then when we want to think about behavior management, we want to look for solutions. We don't want to blame. Pointing blame and assigning blame, it has its purpose, absolutely. But when we're talking about behavior management, assigning blame isn't necessarily going to help overcome the behavior obstacle. So we want to think about that. Let's seek a solution, and let's just think about it. And sometimes we need to think about it on our own, and the answer might not be immediately in front of us. The answer might come later. The answer might need to be talked about with, we can contact our closest friend, or our partner, or maybe a teacher, maybe our parents, maybe our own parents, and say, hey, this is what I noticed, but can you help me think of other solutions? Because right now, the only thing I can think of is assigning blame, or saying, oh, well, so-and-so did it. And then later on, what we're going to hear is, well, so-and-so did it. And we're going to be even more frustrated, right? So we want to think about that. Also, we want to use the least intrusive or forceful technique possible. And that's obviously, we don't want to use force, but we definitely want to push our child in the direction, towards the direction we want them to go. So we want to think about, what's a way that I can do that? How can I help this? Without, thinking of immediately going to something that's so forceful or so drastic. We want to avoid that drastic, because if it becomes more drastic, then it starts to feel more like punishment. So we want to think about those things. We don't want to go from extremes. Anybody who's in a room with people never wants to be, just like when, for example, when we're on the subway and somebody does something completely out of character or something very extreme, we all want to move to the other side. It's the same thing when we're talking about behavior. We also don't want them to go to an extreme. So we don't want to do this. And we certainly don't want to teach somebody that going to that extreme is acceptable either. Not in terms of getting what we want, not whether that's a behavior or something else. We want to model appropriate and tolerant and respectful behavior. So we're the first model, right? We want to be tolerant. And tolerance is something, some people translate into patience, being patient. Sometimes that it takes different contexts, but we want to make sure that we're listening and that we're open to being listened to, and hopefully they'll realize that they need to be the same way. We can always push them in that direction if they're not. Remember, they're not going to get it on the first go, and behavior is something that we're always learning. I mean, so many of us have therapists for a long time, right? So we want to remember that. And then being respectful with our behavior, whether it's between other adults, whether it's between me and the child. We also want to remember to be respectful. We want to encourage and inspire hope and success. We want to encourage someone to keep going. We want to encourage someone to keep trying, to not get discouraged, to remember that, things take time. And we want to remember, when it comes to behaviors, even when we're disappointed, we need to remember to find the glimmers of hope in what we've seen, and share that with the child and remind them, you did do this right, you did do that right, but we can do this too, and I can help you do that, and I'm here to support you to do that. We never want to do anything that's disrespectful or bad for our child's health. and safety. And we put in here, remember the golden rule, like do unto others as you would do unto, have others do unto you. But we never want to do anything that's disrespectful for our child or that might jeopardize our child's health. So we want to remember that. Also, never give up on your child. And I know that sounds obvious, right? But sometimes we need that reminder. We need that reminder, these are little people. They are growing and developing, and they are trying to learn. They're trying to learn everything. They're trying to learn so much, and they're trying to overcome so much. And especially like in these times of COVID, where we've seen like so many things that we have to overcome as adults, we have to imagine what that must be like in the place of a child, especially as they're trying to overcome, not seeing their friends or doing everything behind a computer, and not knowing, like limits and having to redefine life. There's so many things, but don't give up on your child. Also connect with your child and build strong and positive emotional bonds with them. Excuse me. We want to remember to connect with them and talk to them, hey, how was your day? What did you do? Who did you talk to? What was fun about it? What was disappointing about it? Tell me more. Connect with them, bond with them. They want to bond with you. So think about that. And then catch your kids being good. Catch your kids being good. Be observant, be watchful, and keep an eye on them. And whenever you see it, praise them, praise them. They want to hear that praise. They want to hear that praise from you. Like you're their biggest person all their life, and they want to hear from you. When they see that you see it, then they feel like they've done something good. They feel valued. They feel positive. They feel respected. They feel acknowledged, and they feel a part of it. And they feel a part of the family, whether that's just you and the child or you and larger extended family. I've listed here a bunch of resources that are really helpful, and that have been part of like supporting this presentation today. And you can access them, and I will share them with you afterwards. But I do want to, before we go to Q&A, I do want to talk really quickly about how to talk about this with your, excuse me, how to talk about this with, like, for say, your child's teacher. Like, how do I talk to my child's teacher about this? You can talk to your teacher, and you can, share your child's strengths and say, these are my child's strengths. And just like, do you notice these things too? Do you notice something different? Do you notice something, that we could talk about, and build it up, talk about, build it up, because you never know, like your child's teacher is seeing so much as well. So, kind of corroborate that and say like, oh, my child really likes, the color red. Do you notice that in class too? I mean, this is just a very simple example broken down, right? But in terms of my child's study habits, do you notice this? Or in terms of my child's behavior, have you noticed that whenever you do this, this happens? Like if you're starting to see things at home, kind of check in with the teacher and say, hey, do you see this at school too? And think about that. And remember, if your child has an IEP, there's a component of it around behavior. So you can talk about behavior. You can make behavior as a part of the goals. If you feel that there's some certain behaviors that you are concerned about, share that with the IEP team and say, hey, or if the IEP team or the teachers are bringing you behavior to you, and you don't know how to address it at home, feel like, okay, hey, can we get a functional behavior assessment done for my child? And that's where the child is observed for a certain amount of time, over a certain amount of time as well, to like kind of see and diagnose and troubleshoot, like, hey, what's happening? What's happening before the child does this behavior? Are we noticing a pattern here? And if so, what can we do to break the pattern? What can we do to understand the behavior that's showing up to help us understand? Is it related to the disability, or is this the child just being a child and behaving to try to express something else? So we want to make sure that we kind of understand that. And so that's how we can check in with the teacher. We can also ask a teacher, like, are there patterns? Do you notice this? Do you notice that my child feels challenged in a certain situation and acts out in this way? And, and this is time to kind of be candid too. Like, hey, I notice whenever this happens, this also happens as well right after it. So we want to make sure that we're talking about that. And if somebody's asking you or trying to share something with you, like if a teacher is trying to share, like, this is what happens when your child does this, don't be afraid to ask to see the data. Let's verify the information. Help me understand what you're seeing at school. And vice versa. If a teacher says this is happening, and you're like, oh, you know what, this is actually what's happening at home too, then you guys can see eye to eye. It's an opportunity to develop your own relationship around the education professionals that are working with your child. So we want to think about those patterns and let's see the data. The data can such a big word. And so sometimes we think of data, we think of scores, grades, very factual numbers, right? Data can also be a child's homework assignment or a child's art portfolio or the way a child did something, the way a child's done something over time. So we don't let's not limit ourselves to data as like thinking it's a spreadsheet exactly, right? If only that were the case, and thank goodness it isn't, right? But let's ask for the data. Let's see the data, before we start, doing things, let's see it, like, hey, you see that you say that you see these behaviors. Let's do a functional behavior assessment before you try and change things, before we, and then once we see the data from the functional behavior assessment, then we can create a behavior improvement plan. And then we can talk about that and include that in the IEP. And I also want to tell you and remind you that you as the parent are a huge part of that IEP team. And you have the ability to set goals, those goals that are in the present levels of performance and all of that. So whenever we're like, oh, at the end of the year, we want this. If there's something you want around behavior, speak up and say, hey, I would like for my child to be able to do this instead of what we're doing now, or, or I would like additional support with this. So you feel free to ask that. And also you can also ask, whether it's the IEP team or even the teacher, what is always there that's consistent to help my child meet these expectations? What is the school doing that can help my child or that's working? And also in terms of like parent counseling that's included in so many IEPs, that's an opportunity for you to ask, hey, whatever you're doing at school, can you also teach me so that I can do it at home? That's a perfect opportunity. And whether that means working with the school's psychologist or the counselor, you can also learn the methods that are being used at school to help support your child. If it's working and you want to use that, right? And then, and feel free to ask, what is the evidence that this is going to work? What if you don't, if you're not buying into it, good. Ask those questions and say, hey, just help me understand why we want to go in this direction when it comes to addressing behavior. What makes you think that this is going to work since these other methods haven't worked, right? And then you can ask about staff support. Ask the teacher, are they getting what they need to help your child? Because so many teachers, they have needs too, and they also want to know, they want to know, well, first you want to know that they as teachers have everything that they need to help support your child. So sometimes maybe they're not getting that. And you can ask and just say, hey, I would like to know, do you feel like you have everything to support my child? And maybe it's a big question or an open-ended question, but maybe there's a lot of things to discover in that conversation. And it's also going to help you develop that rapport with the teacher as well. Or it could be the speech language therapist, right? There are many professionals working with our children. So, we're like, let's just ask. And you always want to share your feedback and, be involved and let the other, let them know, you want your child just to be best supported as possible. And, like, feel free, to make it a two-way street, because we're talking about the development of a child after all. And we talk about so much in education, it takes a village. It does. It takes all of us. So we want to remember that. I also want to remind you that you can talk about start a conversation with your teacher, your child's teacher, say, hey, like, hey, I'm so-and-so's mother, I'm JC's mother, and I've noticed, a lot of like pent up emotions recently. Are you noticing that in school too? Like, do you feel like there's some tension in JC right now? Do you feel like something's going on? Because I don't know, something's different. Talk about that. Those are ways that you can approach a teacher or approach people that are working with your child, and just kind of like, fish for information. And searching for that information, there's so many ways to get to it. You can also, you can ask to have a conversation about them, or say, I'm worried about this, or this is worrying about JC's behavior. JC is doing this at home, and I don't understand why. Can you help me? Or are you seeing something that I'm not seeing? Is something going on at school? And then you might find out, oh yeah, actually, they're having difficulty in this, in this math class, and then and then it boils down to reading, and then it boils down to friends. It could go anywhere, but those are ways to start the conversation as well. You can also share information. JC's been very angry, or since school started, and any little thing sets him off, and he doesn't want to do his homework. I don't know what to do, and like, are you seeing something? We always want to just, if we share something, it'll make somebody also feel more easily ready to share back. You can also ask questions, like, can you tell me how they're doing in school? Can you tell me, are you noticing certain things in their behavior? And you can have that conversation with any of the teachers or providers that are working with your child. You have access under IDEA to all educational documents. So you can find out information that way as well. And then you can also follow up and get answers. So, like when a teacher says, oh, well, they're not behaving. Okay. What do you mean? Are you saying, are they being disrespectful? Are they, are they cheating? What are they doing? Can you tell me what it is they're not doing in terms of their expected behavior? And can you give me an example? Help, that's part of the data, right? That I was talking about earlier. Give me an example. What are you talking about exactly? I want to make sure that I understand what you're trying to say. And then what can I do to help improve his behavior, JC's behavior at home? Like, tell me what you're doing at school that's making him do this so well, because I feel like when he's at school, he's applied. When he's at home, he's not. So can you kind of help me like understand how to navigate that? How to understand that? Is there something that I'm not doing that I can be doing? What can I do more of, right? And again, like this is behavior we're talking about. We're not talking about, like science. We're not talking about geology. We're talking about, behavior. Like, this is not something that you're going to have to like do something completely, read a textbook or anything like that. And then whenever you do have that conversation with your child's professional, just make sure to thank them and say, thanks for talking to me. And now I think I have a better idea of what's going on. Can we talk about it in the future? I might try and have some questions for you later. I'm going to try a few things and just try and understand things on a different level based on the conversation that we've had tonight. And just go from there. Let's see. I'm going to look here in the chat window and say, this topic is very interesting. Too bad I have another meeting. I would love to have a copy. Yes, a copy will be sent. But yes, so that's where I was going to go before going to Q&A. So what questions do we have? Thank you so much for all of your questions tonight, and I hope I can help you answer them. Some of them were very specific in trying to understand behavior. Some of them were trying to understand, like, how do I stop my child from being obsessed with their tablet? But if you have any questions right now, please, I'm done presenting in terms of slides. So, oh, and let me check on Facebook as well. Director of Training and Development here at Synergy. Oops. Okay. All right. Well, I don't see any questions on Facebook. I don't see any questions here. Is there anything else I can help anybody with, or any other question that you would like to ask? Yes, all the presentation, the recording will be available on our Facebook and social media, and the PowerPoint I will share, as well as the online resources that I had. I hope this has been really helpful for all of you tonight. I will go ahead and activate the polls. If you feel that you need to talk more about this, you can always reach out to me. My information will be in the follow-up email. If you feel that you need the support of an education, special education advocate or specialist, we have those that offer bilingual one-on-one support in English and Spanish. But yes, I will be sure to share this information with you. And thank you so much for attending. I will activate that poll right now. Oh, how to handle kids while there is a small argument in the house. So a small argument, a small argument in the house, I mean, you definitely don't want the child to see it. And sometimes that's avoidable, sometimes it's not, right? But we definitely want to try and like not expose the child to a certain situation. So maybe if you realize that something's about to happen, like say, hey, you know what? I need to talk to daddy alone, or I need to talk to your aunt alone right now. And say, do you mind sitting in your room for a few minutes and I'll be right back. You didn't do anything wrong, just remind them, reinforce that, and then say, like, hey, I'll be right back. And that's a way to talk about it. If unfortunately the child is stuck in the situation, or maybe it happens in the car, right? Then that might be something to say to the person you're having the argument with, hey, this isn't the right place for us to have this conversation. Can we talk about this later? Put a pin in it. We'll talk about it in a more appropriate setting. Right now, we need to get through whatever we're getting through, and also be mindful that we have a young person here. And that way you keep the responsibility on both you and the other adult or the other person you're having the argument with. And and it doesn't feel like the child needs to it's on the child if the child had anything to do with it. So I hope that answers your question. Mi hijo tiene 11 años. ¿Cómo detectamos el mal comportamiento y frustración? So the translation here is, my child is 11 years old. How do we detect bad behavior and frustration? Like, how do I know what's the difference? So frustration, we can see our frustration in our children. We know our children best, being their parents. So we notice their habits, and we notice like how they behave and how they react in frustration. So I would always say, go to that first and look at that. Say like, okay, I know whenever he gets frustrated, he likes to throw things. I know whenever he gets frustrated, or she likes to get frustrated, that they throw themselves on the floor, or that they start panting, or that they start, sighing, or they start hitting things, or they start slamming doors. That's how you can start to tell, like, oh, okay, yeah, I noticed what happened. And then as soon as we see them get what they want, then we know we can see the change in behavior. So we can see like the frustration, what the frustration looks like, as opposed to like actual bad behavior. What should a parent do if they don't feel they are getting sufficient resources at school to help a child having behavior problems? That's a great question, and thank you for asking it. So if a parent feels like they're not getting enough resources, then one thing that you can do is have an IEP meeting. Explain that to all the members on the IEP team so that everybody's aware of how you feel. Now, if that's already happened, then at that point, you can also talk to the principal if the principal isn't a part of those meetings. You can also escalate that matter within the Department of Education. You can also seek the help of somebody at a parent center. We have 3 federally funded parent centers here in New York, and we all have staff to help support parents. So maybe saying, hey, you know what? I've asked for this, and this is what I'm not getting. I need more. Don't feel like this is enough. And that's where, you can kind of troubleshoot it with, a special education advocate or a specialist, and get that help and support to kind of help you kind of like look for other solutions. You always have the ability, if for say like evaluations within the Department of Education aren't confirming or corroborating what you're seeing at home, then you can also ask for an independent evaluation if that's something that you would like to do. If you feel like the school isn't doing enough, then maybe they need to do a functional behavior assessment and look at behavior through that lens. If they've already done one and and it's still not working, then you should say that. If another behavior is coming up, and then you can say, hey, maybe we fixed this one, or maybe this got better, but this is what's coming up now. That's another way to also look at it. But yes, those are ways that you can also find other resources. Parent centers are great because parent centers are federally funded, and also parent centers have to vet information, and the information that they get from most of resources and technical assistance is already vetted as well. So that could be really helpful. Before I go, small arguments turn into big ones between my son and older daughter. Yes, that can happen because there's a lack of self-control, right? Because they're both learning how to behave. And so things can escalate quickly. One thing you could do is to sit down with both of them and explain different points of view and talk about compromise. One thing that you can do is if you to come to you and teach them to come to you whenever they're having a difficult situation, so that you can kind of moderate and mediate in some ways. That's also another way between children, because siblings, I mean, gosh, even my own. But yes, and all kidding aside, just learning to talk to them together, talking to them separately also helps, because it's extra attention, and maybe they just need that guidance and they need that support. So that's what I would suggest. My son is 9 and has limited verbal ability. When he's frustrated, sometimes meltdowns, they usually come after not getting what he wanted or asked for, or not being understood. Absolutely. We struggle to know how to coach him through, often trying to continue guessing what he wanted. Is it this? Was it that? And that makes him more upset. We want him to feel understood, but really can't understand everything he is trying to communicate with us. This is a very big challenge, especially with children that do not speak, don't have that ability, or that ability to articulate exactly what they want, right? I mean, one thing that I would consider is seeing how they are with assistive technology, if that might help you in terms of like communication. That might be something that would be helpful. Also, if maybe keeping a set of like not drawings exactly, but also like pictures, and just something that they can point to, or asking them, can they draw it? Is there something that they can, if they can point to it exactly, that also might help. But yes, I mean, and that frustration, not being understood, that's such a human characteristic within all of us. I mean, even as adults, we don't like not being understood. And it's even more frustrating for a child who can't express that. And so I empathize with that frustration. How to coach them through that, I would say, like, put on your observation cap and look for patterns in terms of behavior. See, if like you've been able to troubleshoot it in the past and say like, okay, this is how we got him to calm down, and we did this, like, kind of keep a record of those things. And that way, like whenever a situation comes up again, like, hey, this is the thing we had, here's a picture of the thing that we did last time. Maybe this will work, and maybe they can point to it. But yes, that would be a great way to start understanding and how to coach the child through it. And then once you discover like what the root of that is, then you can kind of like create like what is it? The situation cards. Like this, when this happens, this is what will happen, and then you can tell mommy this, or this is what you can do to tell mommy that this is what you need. And that might be helpful as well. My son has been using profanity in school towards others when trying to escape doing schoolwork, and he has picked it up from a book read in ELA. How do I approach the teacher about this? So I would, I'm sorry to hear that. Excuse me. Um, when a child's trying to just avoid, it's kind of like deliberately doing something to get in trouble, to distract from, the assignment. And that can be something where you can, talk to the teacher and say like, you know what, this is what I noticed. And whenever he doesn't want to do something, um, this is what he'll do. He'll do something to get in trouble. We see that it's a classic behavior, right? Unfortunately, the profanity is something that we have to like also share, like, you can't do this, you can't say this, and you can't do this here. And we have to teach around that as well. If it's something that's still like stuck, like it's like everything that you're doing and everything that the school is doing is not working, then I would also recommend a functional behavior assessment, and maybe even talk to the teacher and counselor slash school psychologist and talk for, how, what, we've tried this, we've done this, what else can we do? Can we do a functional behavior assessment? Because this is something that seems to be like the child knows what's going to happen, because this is the outcome they desire and this is not the outcome. You can also play with like the outcome itself, and say like, okay, if you're not going to do this homework, then you can work on this other assignment, or you can do something else. Give them an alternative, and even if they don't want to do the homework, maybe temporarily, like, okay, take 30 minutes, take a walk, and let's come back to this later. Sometimes, even as adults, we get frustrated with what's in front of us and we just need to like take a break. So maybe offer that, and say like, hey, I hear you. I know you don't want to do this. Let's try it this way. You do have to do it at some point, maybe not right now, but we have to do this before tomorrow. That might be another way to explore it. My 3-year-old does not have diagnosed issues, however, can be resistant to directions like getting into the tub, getting dressed, coming here. Tapping him on the boom boom seems to be the only way to get his attention. With 3-year-olds, is talking realistic? I absolutely hear what you're saying. And actually, yes, I think that talking to a 3-year-old and just letting them know, you know, even if they don't understand it, they can hear it. And then as those words start to make more sense, it will make more sense to them as well. So yes, talking to them is good. And like I was just saying for the other parent, offering an alternative. Okay, if you don't want to do this, then we can do this. And sometimes, it's like, oh, okay, then I guess I'll do that. So giving that alternative as well. But yes, I do think that talking realistically, even if you have to like baby it, maybe make it into like baby language, but still, to communicate, you don't want to speak above them, right? But you definitely want them to try and understand. So it's not a futile effort. Um, my child does not get frustrated in that way. Let's see. Also, kids are too busy in school and schedules. How to encourage them to stay escalated throughout the week. How to encourage a student to stay, a kid to stay motivated, maybe. Miss Desai, is that what you were trying to say? We'll come back to that. Check the Q&A. Oh, thank you. I'm so sorry. My 4-year-old only wants to watch cartoons while at home. What should I do to stop and change this? So when it's talking to cartoons, you can offer alternatives. You can offer other activities. You can also change the activity. Like, oh, we actually need to go somewhere. We need to go do something. Just kind of like create an incentive to break away for something else that they really enjoy, to do. Going out, we're going to go outside and to the park instead. So giving them a reason to like do something different, and just explore. Getting glued to cartoons is really, I've seen that, and sometimes it's just showing them that there is something else. My daughter was playing all the time until about 1 month ago. Nothing has changed. Don't know what happened. She kind of stopped very suddenly. I would check with your daughter's teachers and see if they've noticed the same thing and talk and see if there's some sort of activity that's also may have happened. But then like maybe taking your daughter to do some of those things that she enjoyed doing in the past, even up to a month ago, and seeing, like, hey, like you used to like doing this, and try to like have that conversation. You just kind of fish around for that. I mean, obviously, you could ask for counseling or maybe like even tips from the school psychologist on how to talk about that. But that would be a good point to start. My son has been using profanity in school towards others. We've talked about this. Regarding consequences, if a child is not behaving, is there ever a time to use punitive consequences? Or are you suggesting we never use punitive consequences? I think you can always use punitive consequences, and you just really have to be careful with what you're trying to convey. And you just have to also make sure that the child understands that it's where that stops, where that certain punitive consequence, stops as well. Like this will happen. But we want to try and use the least amount of force. But I mean, if you're talking about spankings in terms of that, or maybe getting grounded or going to timeout, there are just different ways that you can graduate consequences too. So think about how you want to structure that, because you don't want to think like, if you do this, then this will happen always. Like, I mean, hopefully the child will behave, but you also want to kind of graduate, excuse me, how you talk to them, and also like how they understand consequences. Um, so I'm not saying never use them, but I'm saying just structure them so that like the extreme is at the very, very, very end. Because you don't want to get to the very end and then now you're really out of solutions, right? ¿Cómo manejar el comportamiento de los? How to manage behavior in adolescence. That is a big question, and we could do a whole webinar on that. I would need to know something more exact, because when it comes to adolescence, there's so much going on. There's hormones, there's discovering, adulthood and other topics. So that would be something to talk about more, in types of what behaviors, and what's going on around that behavior. So sorry that my answer doesn't help you for that one. Thank you for that response. It was really helpful and validating for me and his experience. You're absolutely welcome. How can you address other parents of a child with behavioral problems if he has bullied and physically injured other children in a classroom? That is a really good question, especially when it comes to bullying. And bullying, we have the, I forget what it's called, here in New York City schools, where we talk about, oh gosh, is it called child safe zones? Something like that. But how would I address other parents? First, I would address it with the teachers and the school officials before I would go to a parent directly. And then that way the school can mediate, the school is responsible, the school is aware. And then if those efforts aren't successful, because maybe they need to talk to both of you together, both parties together, and say, hey, you know what, this is what's actually happening. But I would bring it to the attention of the school officials and the teacher, if you haven't already, and also bring it up to your IEP team as soon as you're having these issues, because the sooner you make everyone aware of what's going on, the sooner things will start to change as well, because you're adding that accountability to other parties. My son is 7 years and the other child is 6 months, who is getting more attention. How to deal with the elder one? The elder one, I try and find other ways to spend time with them. Obviously, maybe things that also you can do, spend time with them one-on-one, and also create situations where you can spend time with both of them, and maybe even create situations where the child can also support you in giving that attention to this 6-month-old. Please do a webinar on adolescence. Yes, you know what? That's a great idea. I am writing it down now because yes, and it would be a great topic. Yes, please. Many people are in agreement with you. All right. Yes. All right. Let me see really quick if there are any other questions on Facebook. And if not, we can go ahead and go. Let's see. I see 5 comments. Bear with me 1 second. I would like to ask when an autistic child repeats constantly the same thing. So when it comes to repeating the same thing, especially when a child with autism, sometimes it can be a stemming behavior, sometimes it can be a speech behavior, and that's something that can be that should be addressed with a professional on how to do that. Sometimes it's just the enjoyment of saying it. Sometimes it's the enjoyment of hearing the words. Sometimes it can be the enjoyment of how it's coming out, what muscles it's engaging. It can be a sensory issue as well. So those are those things to consider when we're talking about a child with autism and when they're repeating something. It's something that you have to kind of navigate more with a professional to kind of troubleshoot it and understand it better. How do we teach limits? This is a great question about limits. Limits, we want to teach limits, and we just want to make things in the most, create those situations where we have the most control. So in this case, you know, like what I was saying earlier about developing consequences, we want to make sure that they're natural consequences and that they're short-term consequences, because the more creative, the more complex that we make them, then the less control we have in predicting the outcome. So we always want to be right? Especially when it comes to discipline, like, hey, you know what, if you run with scissors and you fall, you might hurt yourself. You know, you might not hurt yourself every time, but, you know, for that one time, you know, or hey, if you bump into something or you break something, you know, you're not going to be really happy, or you might have to spend 5 minutes in timeout. So we want to make sure that we limit it to a natural consequence and short term. Now, teaching limits in general, that's a whole other conversation. But understanding limits is a really great question. And we have to show kind of like an increase effect. So if like this gets bigger, then this gets bigger, you know, so that's one way of doing it. I hope that helps in terms of like what you're asking in terms of teaching limits, because that's a really big question. Also, I hear about ABA therapy. Can you please explain about this service? So ABA therapy is ABA therapy is something that's used to support children with behaviors, challenging behaviors, and ABA can, it's kind of like, it has a lot of success and everybody wants it. There are different models of it. ABA is probably like the top behavior intervention method that people desire and want to use. There are other types of interventions that have been created that are arguably almost as effective or equally effective, depends who you ask. Also, ABA services are now covered under Medicaid, which is something that was not offered before. But ABA inspired interventions, behavior interventions, and ABA itself is something that you can look into. A lot of people endorse it. A lot of people will want it. A lot of people want it incorporated into what they're just trying to use as an intervention method for their child. You really have to discuss with a professional what's best for you and what you've tried so far, and seeing if ABA is right for you and your child. If you desire a certificate for tonight's workshop, I will, whenever I send the email presentation, please reply back requesting a certificate of attendance, and we're happy to provide that. But yes, seeing no other questions, I want to thank you all for coming tonight. And if you have anything, please ask it right now. I am going to activate the poll, and I really appreciate you filling this out. It's really short. It's about 10 questions and they're all multiple choice. But yes, if you have any other questions or feel like you need additional support, please let me know. Happy to help. And if we can't do it in-house, we're happy to refer you to partners and community organizations that we know that can. But thank you so much for attending tonight. And